Our next storyteller is another co-creator of this show. He is an actor and a storyteller. You've seen him at The Moth and the Nights of Our Lives at the Magnet Theater. He's also the author and performer of 2 solo shows, including his most recent one, which is called A Public Private Prayer, which hopefully you'll get to see live in person if you're in New York City sometime this year. We hope, we think, I don't know. Well, who knows? Maybe though. Please give a warm digital welcome to my buddy, Grant Bowen.
Hey, Will, thanks so much. Yeah, I'm getting those solo show plugs in early because who knows when you'll see them, but hopefully you'll see them. Who knows? My junior year of high school got off to kind of a rough start because I went through a really painful breakup from my first girlfriend, Emmy. The thing is, we were still trying to be friends at school. So it was the kind of situation where I was like, oh, yeah, you know, it was a mutual breakup when really she dumped me. The kind where I was like at school pretending everything's fine. And then I would go home and sob in front of my parents. It was not, and I was dealing with a lot of just feelings of just not being good enough. But luckily some things came along to kind of take my mind off of it. And that is thanks in part to my English teacher, Mrs. Beam. Mrs. Beam was younger, you know, like I'd say around early 30s. She had this short, choppy blonde hair and everything. And she had this bright, bubbly, like engaging personality that made her really like easy to listen to in class. Where she'd go the extra mile is that she would open the floor to discussions with us with like applying what we were learning and how we could use it in our lives and in the world around us. And keep in mind, this was like still fresh in the post 9/11 years. So like we were talking about a lot of big ideas in that class. I really liked taking Mrs. Beam's class, so much so that when she stood up one day and told us that she was starting the debate team and looking for new members, I thought to myself, you know, I've never thought twice about debate, but I mean, why not? So I signed up. It was me and about 5 other kids in this class. We'd meet after school. Mrs. Beam would, you know, teach us the ins and outs of like working in our time limits and taking notes and taking a firm stance on an argument, whether you actually agreed with it or not, and committing to it. And then, you know, we'd have our debates on the weekends at the local college campuses. She'd be there cheering us on every time. And then afterwards, she'd take us out to eat somewhere like Panera Bread. And keep in mind, when you're growing up in a fast food heavy hometown like mine, Panera Bread felt fancy. It was like, ooh, they're letting the Taco Bell people into Panera Bread. I'm underdressed. But then she would get us a booth and she'd go around and ask us about our personal lives. Like she'd want to know about what we were doing and what we were thinking about our futures and everything. So not only was she passionate about what she was teaching and sharing new skills with us, but she was taking an interest in us personally. And I can count on one hand the number of teachers that were doing that for me at the time. Now, it was while I was in Mrs. Beam's class that I met my second girlfriend, Ashley. Ashley was, like most of the girls I would date in life, a theater kid. So she was shorter, she was a brunette, and she had mastered the art of acting blasé, just like, whatever, I don't care. And that made her attractive to me because that was a skill I really wanted to get better at. And so we started spending more time with each other. And soon we found out that we had 2 interests in common: school plays and making out. We would sit together in rehearsals after school, and then we'd find empty hallways and make out in them. And then I would drive her home, and then we'd make out more in the car. And then sometimes we'd even hang out at her house, where we would then proceed with the same activity. It was great. And, you know, the more time we spent with each other, the more I started to think maybe this could be like a personal connection too. Now, Ashley had told me when we started dating that she had to break up with her last boyfriend because he left school to join the army. 2 months after we've been dating, we're at lunch, we're sitting in the cafeteria, kids are buzzing about, we're catching up on gossip, and then she casually slips in that he may be coming back from basic training soon. And she goes, you know, wherever he goes next, I hope he doesn't come back here, like to this town. And I was just like, oh, why? And she goes, well, if he comes back here, then I might have to choose between the two of you. And I was like, oh, okay, but that's not a problem, because if you had to, you would choose me, right? And in that same blasé attitude that she had mastered, she just looked at me and went, I don't know. And then the bell rang and everyone's scattering to go back to class. I'm trying to walk along with her for a bit. And I'm just going like, wait, what do you mean? And then she splits off to go to her class and I have to keep going to my class. And I was just stunned. And the thoughts were just piling up. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? We've been spending all this time together. And then there was the rejection. Like, not only had I lost my first girlfriend, who I actually fell in love with, but now here was my second girlfriend telling me that I would probably lose out to a guy I'd never even met. And maybe I just wasn't going to be good enough for anybody. And I just started to crumble on the inside. And eventually I started to crumble on the outside. And unfortunately, that was while I was sitting in Mrs. Beam's class. She's starting the lesson. I'm sitting off to the side, trying desperately like not to look like I'm about to cry. And she notices. And she plays it very cool and casual. She goes, hey, you know what, everyone, just turn to this page, read this section. I'm going to be like right back. Grant, do you want to step out into the hall with me? And so I go out into the hall with her and she looks at me and, like many adults at this point in my life, went, what is wrong? So it just all comes tumbling out. I tell her about Ashley. I tell her about the boyfriend. I tell her about what had just happened in the cafeteria and how I was feeling. And I'm sobbing so much, I can't believe she understands what I'm saying. And then when I'm done, there's a pause and she just kind of stands for a second and just goes and puts her hand on my shoulder and goes, it was very inappropriate for her to tell you that, and you deserve better. Now, go to the boys' room, take all the time you need. When you're ready, wash your face and come back to class. And she went back into the classroom. For all the time I had spent in Mrs. Beam's class and going to the debates with her, that is the most important thing she ever did for me. To see me at what at the time was one of my lowest moments and told me that I was worth more. That was on a Friday. On Monday, I came back to school and broke up with Ashley. Thank you.